50 Cent was reportedly robbed and brutally beaten after leaking a section of his highly anticipated upcoming documentary. But what's truly jaw-dropping isn't just the incident itself, it's who may actually be responsible for ordering it. Early reports suggest that a coordinated group of individuals showed up directly at his residence, allegedly with the intent to kidnap him, physically intimidate him, or force him into pulling the documentary entirely from release. And the allegations don't stop there. Sources close to the situation are claiming these individuals weren't acting alone, they were allegedly hired and financially compensated by well-known figures in the rap industry. The entire entertainment world has been thrown into a state of shock, leaving one massive question hanging in the air: what exactly are these artists so desperate to hide? And just how explosive is this documentary that 50 Cent has been putting together? In this video, we are going to break every single piece of this story wide open. We'll go through the leaked footage, walk you through what the reports say actually happened that night, and lay out the full picture of what has been building behind the scenes for months. Stick with us, because this story goes far deeper than any headline is telling you. If you've followed hip-hop for any length of time, you already know that 50 Cent is not the kind of man who shrinks from confrontation. This is someone who has spent over 2 decades being on both the delivering and the receiving end of some of the most intense conflict the music industry has ever witnessed. He does not retreat. He does not avoid. He moves toward the fire. So when a story drops saying 50 Cent was robbed and physically beaten, a massive portion of the internet believes it without blinking, because the history of this man's life practically makes that headline sound completely routine. Let's trace it back to the very beginning of the mythology. In the year 2000, a man by the name of Daryl Baum allegedly approached 50 Cent and fired 9 separate shots into his body. 9 bullets. And not a single one of them struck a vital organ. 50 Cent survived what by all medical logic should have been unsurvivable, and after months of extensive recovery, he came back to the industry not broken, not silenced, but sharper, harder, and more determined than ever. That shooting became one of the most iconic chapters in the entire history of hip-hop. It transformed 50 Cent from a rising Queens rapper into a living legend before he had even released a major label album. The attack was allegedly connected to his deepening conflict with Supreme McGriff, a feared and notorious figure from the Queens streets who, according to sources at the time, placed a bounty directly on 50 Cent's life. 50 survived. He healed. And then he did something remarkable: he converted every ounce of that trauma into energy, into art, into fuel. He turned his entire life story into a cinematic experience with his 2005 biographical film, appropriately and brilliantly titled Get Rich or Die Tryin'. But the violence tied to 50 Cent's name was far from finished with that chapter. Move forward to 2014. The Hot 97 Summer Jam Concert. One of the biggest outdoor hip-hop events in the country, with roughly 80,000 fans in attendance. During a G-Unit performance, an incident allegedly unfolded that would become one of the most controversial moments in Summer Jam history. MC Slow, associated with the Slowbucks camp, was reportedly assaulted and had his chains snatched from around his neck, allegedly by members connected to 50 Cent's crew. According to All Hip Hop, Slowbucks associates who were near the stage during the G-Unit set were jumped, kicked, punched, and robbed of their jewelry. Video footage captured a man on the ground being beaten by multiple people. The alleged motive? Members of the Slowbucks camp had taken a photograph alongside 50 Cent's rivals and his estranged son Marquise, then posted it publicly on Instagram. 50 Cent responded to that photo at the time with one simple caption: "This picture was a bad idea." It doesn't take much reading between the lines there. Then comes 2015, and a jeweler named Robert Marin steps forward with a claim that sent shockwaves through the industry. Marin, the owner of LAX Jewelry Company, stated publicly that he had traveled to Las Vegas to sell 50 Cent a watch and chain worth a combined $250,000. According to Marin's account, after spending the early morning hours with 50's crew at a club, he was invited by members of the rapper's entourage to visit Floyd Mayweather's private gym. Once he arrived at that location, Marin claims that 2 men associated with 50 Cent pulled out firearms, pistol-whipped him, stripped him of the jewelry pieces, and fled. The dollar value reported was $250,000. 50 Cent's legal team responded with a swift and total denial, calling the allegations baseless and entirely fabricated. Law enforcement eventually confirmed that 50 Cent himself was not formally considered a suspect in the investigation, but the story added yet another layer to the increasingly complicated narrative surrounding this man. Then in 2024, 50 Cent was hit in an entirely different kind of robbery, one that required no physical violence at all. hackers took over his verified social media accounts and his website, using both platforms to promote a fraudulent cryptocurrency project called Unitcoin. In what seemed like an official endorsement from 50 Cent, his compromised accounts began advertising the fake token to his millions of followers. Within just 30 minutes, the scam had generated significant money. 50 Cent rushed to Instagram to clarify the situation, writing, "My Twitter and this ISS.com was hacked and I have no association with this crypto." He added that Twitter worked rapidly to restore his account. Investigators later determined that the actual amount moved in crypto was approximately $3 million when converted, still a staggering number for a hack that lasted less than half an hour. So let's look at what this track record tells us. This is a man who has been shot 9 times, whose name has been linked to brutal assaults at major concerts, who has had robbery accusations circle him for years, and who has been digitally robbed of millions by anonymous hackers. When the internet sees a headline reading 50 Cent robbed and beaten, people don't question it, they click it. They believe it. Because in the universe that is 50 Cent's life, that headline fits perfectly. But here's where we have to zoom out and look at the full context of what is actually happening in 2026. To properly understand the current situation, you first need to understand the transformation that has taken place in 50 Cent's career and identity. He is no longer simply a rapper. He hasn't been just a rapper for a long time. He is one of the most powerful executive producers in television, and over the past year, he has shifted his focus with tremendous force into the world of documentary filmmaking. And that shift has created consequences nobody in hip-hop anticipated. In December of 2025, 50 Cent released the most talked about project of his producing career, Sean Combs' The Reckoning. This American television documentary miniseries, directed by Alexandria Stapleton, centered on the growing storm of sexual misconduct allegations against music mogul Sean Diddy Combs. The series landed on Netflix on December 2, 2025, and the reception was unlike anything 50 Cent had experienced since the height of his rap career. Speaking about the project, 50 Cent stated, "I've been committed to real storytelling for years through G-Unit Film and Television. I'm grateful to everyone who came forward and trusted us with their stories." The numbers backed up every word of that confidence. In just the first 6 days after its Netflix premiere, the documentary was viewed 21.8 million times, making it the second most watched title on the entire platform during the week of December 1st through 8th, trailing only behind Volume 1 of Stranger Things Season 5. Critics came out overwhelmingly in support, with 90% positive reviews on Rotten Tomatoes and a critical consensus describing the documentary as meticulous and sober rather than sensational. But the cultural earthquake caused by the documentary didn't come without controversy. Questions arose about how certain footage was obtained, including specific hotel room recordings. When NBC News correspondent Chloe Mellis pressed 50 Cent on that topic, he responded with characteristic smoothness, "I figured most journalists would not disclose their sources. Clean. Simple. Untouchable." What the documentary proved was bigger than the Diddy story itself. It proved that 50 Cent had discovered a new weapon, one more powerful than any diss track or social media post. He could take personal beefs, add documentation, add storytelling, add structure, put it on the biggest streaming platform in the world, and reach tens of millions of people. And once he realized that, there was no going back. January 2026 arrived and 50 Cent didn't slow down for a single second. He announced a collaboration with A&E for a true crime series titled Gang Wars. He confirmed the partnership on Instagram himself, writing, "Gang Wars coming soon. A&E, I got some heat." Deadline described the series as an unfiltered look into America's most infamous gang rivalries with unprecedented access and never-before-heard accounts. Then February 2026 brought another tease. When Jay-Z's name appeared in a newly released batch of Jeffrey Epstein documents published by the Department of Justice, 50 Cent immediately floated the idea of a Netflix documentary on the subject. Now, context matters enormously here. Jay-Z's name, along with those of Pusha T and Harvey Weinstein, did not come from Epstein's own records or corroborated law enforcement investigations. The names appeared in an unverified tip submitted to the FBI, archived as part of the broader investigation. The tip does not indicate these individuals were ever formally investigated. It does not imply guilt in any form. But 50 Cent, with surgical precision, recognized a viral moment and latched onto it. This is who Curtis 50 Cent Jackson is in 2026. He is a content factory walking in human form. Every feud, every controversy, every piece of gossip, every headline, he processes it all through one lens. Can I turn this into a documentary? And that mindset is precisely what leads us to the real story behind the robbed and beaten headlines. The current war between 50 Cent and T.I. has one single origin point, and it started not with violence, not with a diss track, but with a celebration that never came together. T.I. revealed on the $1 Million Worth of Game podcast, hosted by Gillie Da Kid and Wallow, that he and 50 Cent had been in active negotiations to face off in a Versus battle, the legendary platform where artists celebrate their catalogs in a side-by-side showdown format. According to T.I., both men were aligned, both were excited, and everything appeared to be in motion. The plan, as T.I. described it, was for him to publicly commit first and then 50 would follow immediately after to solidify the matchup. T.I. jumped out publicly. And then 50 Cent acted like the whole conversation had never happened. T.I. described the moment on the podcast with raw frustration. I said, "What you think about this?" He was like, "You want to do that, S?" I said, "Yeah." He was like, "Alright, cool." I told him, "I'ma jump out there first and then you just go jump out there and we'll line it up." He said, "Alright." When I jumped out, that N** acted like he ain't know what the FK going on. Being left hanging in public, that kind of humiliation, ignited something in T.I. that had clearly been building for years. He went straight into the studio. T.I. released a rapid-fire sequence of 4 diss tracks: War, The Right One, Lessons, and What Bully. His sons, King Harris and Domani Harris, also stepped into the ring and added their own contributions to the war. The beef between these two figures wasn't completely new, its roots actually stretch back to 2006, when both men were arguably at the absolute peak of their commercial and cultural influence. 50 Cent was the undisputed king of G-Unit and New York rap. T.I. was firmly establishing himself as the self-proclaimed king of the South. The tension in 2006 never erupted into open warfare, but the quiet animosity and competitive side-eyes never truly went away either. In 2026, 2 decades of unspoken rivalry finally exploded onto the surface. DJ Academics drew direct comparisons between this beef and the Drake vs. Kendrick Lamar saga, cementing it as one of the defining rivalries of the year. Now here's where 50 Cent's approach becomes fascinatingly unconventional. Rather than going into the studio and firing back with a diss track of his own, 50 Cent did what 50 Cent always does. He flooded his social media with jokes, targeted memes, and pointed posts aimed at T.I., his wife Tamika Tiny Harris, and their son King Harris. He posted an unflattering photo of Tiny on Instagram with a caption directed at T.I., telling him to keep his name out of his mouth. Many in the public viewed the post as deliberately disrespectful and mocking toward Tiny specifically. T.I. responded to TMZ with measured composure, "Man, that's such last week, man. The only thing I have to say, it's very unfortunate, but honestly, I wasn't here to defeat, I was here to defend." Meanwhile, T.I.'s retirement album Kill the King was gaining serious momentum. The single Let 'Em Know had become one of the early standout hits of 2026, reportedly reaching #1 on urban radio and climbing multiple charts. The album was resonating, and the beef was fueling it. And then things turned deeply personal. This is the moment where the story shifts from a typical celebrity beef into something more uncomfortable and more significant. Domani Harris, T.I.'s 24-year-old son, released a diss track called Ms. Jackson, the title being a direct reference to the classic Outkast record. But the content was anything but celebratory. Domani addressed the track to 50 Cent's late mother, Sabrina Jackson, a woman who died in an apartment fire when Curtis Jackson was just 8 years old. Let that sink in. One of the defining tragedies of 50 Cent's entire life, losing his mother as a child, became the subject of a diss record. King Harris took it even further. Not only did he release his own diss material, but he physically wore a t-shirt bearing the image of 50 Cent's deceased mother during the rollout of his track. He posted to Instagram, "Her da goddamns Jackson OG packs out here, F of 50 and this MF blowing GG." He also surfaced footage of 50 Cent's ex-girlfriend Daphne Joy alongside his father, and began highlighting the violent allegations that Joy had previously made against 50 Cent. Domani followed up with another track called Pewee, incorporating a photo that appeared to reference Joy's past claims and addressing them lyrically. Then came the paperwork. King Harris dropped what he claimed was documentation alleging that 50 Cent had snitched on Jimmy Henchman. In hip-hop culture, the accusation of snitching is one of the most nuclear attacks you can launch against someone's credibility. It is not just an insult, it is an existential challenge to everything a rapper claims to represent. King Harris wasn't simply writing diss verses. He was attempting to systematically dismantle 50 Cent's entire reputation, brick by brick. And to make the opposing army even larger, Rick Ross joined in. Ross, who carries his own long-running animosity toward 50 Cent, jumped into the comments section and wrote, "Need that T in a 3x libro translation." Ross was co-signing every attack being leveled at 50 Cent and adding his own mockery on top. T.I. himself was asked about his son's involvement on the Abra Laura Rosenberg show. He acknowledged that he didn't need the beef to generate momentum for Let Him Know, and when pushed on whether he endorsed his son's jumping into the fight, he stated plainly that he gained zero enjoyment out of it. But the tracks were already out. The damage was already in motion. So let's be fully transparent about what the robbed and beaten framing actually means, because it isn't about a physical attack. 50 Cent has absorbed 4 diss tracks from T.I. himself. He's been hit by multiple records from King Harris and Domani, both of which go after some of the most sensitive aspects of his personal history. Rick Ross has publicly co-signed the assault. Alleged snitching paperwork has been circulated across social media. His late mother has been referenced and placed on a t-shirt. His ex-girlfriend's assault allegations have been put on record. And through all of this, through every single shot fired at him from multiple directions, 50 Cent has not responded with one single bar of recorded music. In the ecosystem of hip-hop, that absence speaks loudly. In the eyes of a significant portion of the rap community, when someone drops 4 diss tracks at you, when their family joins in, when your deceased mother gets referenced, and when alleged paperwork surfaces, and you respond with nothing but Instagram memes, you have been beaten in the court of public opinion. Not physically. Culturally. You have been robbed of your standing as a lyrical combatant. But this is where the story takes its most critical and fascinating turn. Because 50 Cent didn't respond with music. He responded with something far more dangerous. On March 5, 2026, 50 Cent made his real move. Not a diss track. Not a freestyle. Something far more strategic and far more threatening. He posted, then quickly deleted, a screenshot on Instagram of a headline reading, 50 Cent reportedly developing Surviving T.I. and Tiny documentary. And in the caption, he wrote words that immediately ignited every corner of the internet, "Remember how quiet I got before the Diddy doc?" He added, "Dame thought I wasn't coming. I hope this doesn't mess up your promo tour. They're going to ask about your 20 sexual assault cases. You might want to talk to a crisis PR person." That is a threat. A direct one. And given what 50 Cent just did with his Netflix documentary, the one that got over 21 million views in its first week, that threat carries real and serious weight. The rumored documentary would reportedly deal with allegations that have followed T.I. and Tiny for years. In January 2021, an Atlanta entrepreneur named Sabrina Peterson publicly accused T.I. of holding a gun to her head. This single accusation acted as a catalyst, opening a floodgate. Dozens of women began coming forward with stories alleging a system where T.I. and Tiny would invite women to VIP sections or hotel suites, provide them with drinks spiked with substances, and assault them. However, despite the volume of these accusations, the legal outcomes heavily favored the Harris family. Criminal investigations were opened in Los Angeles and Las Vegas, but no criminal charges were ever formally filed, largely because the statute of limitations had already expired. The rumor about the documentary originally came from blogger Tasha K, who took to Twitter on Saturday, February 28 to claim that she spoke to alleged sources reportedly connected to the G-Unit Moguls team. The blogger alleged that he's working on a documentary about the Georgia couple and their alleged drugging and assault accusations. Of course, this doesn't have any official confirmation from either side. And it's important to note Tasha K's past trouble with online claims. She lost a defamation suit brought by Cardi B. But whether the documentary is real or not almost doesn't matter at this point. 50 Cent understands that in the modern era of instant viral media, the sheer threat of an exposing documentary often hits significantly harder than the actual project itself. By weaponizing a deleted Instagram post, 50 Cent managed to force T.I. onto the defensive, drag his past traumas back into the mainstream headlines, and control the entire hip-hop narrative without having to spend a single dollar on production. He also posted in a separate comment, "New music today," which sent his followers into speculation mode about whether an actual response track might be incoming. As of March 2026, there is no verified production schedule, network deal, or actual footage to confirm that Surviving T.I. and Tiny even exists. But that's the genius of what 50 Cent does. He deleted the post. He left the question mark. And now every interview T.I. does for his album, every press run, every podcast, someone is going to ask about those allegations. So let's bring this all the way home and answer the question directly. Did 50 Cent get robbed and beaten in 2026? Not physically, no. There is no verified, confirmed report of a physical attack on 50 Cent tied to these events. No confirmed footage. No police report. No medical record. No credible journalist has corroborated a physical assault in this context. But what happened to him in the cultural arena of hip-hop is a very different conversation entirely. T.I. delivered 4 dedicated diss tracks aimed directly at him. King Harris put 50 Cent's deceased mother on a t-shirt and used her image in a music video. Domani wrote a diss track addressed to that same late mother. His ex-girlfriend's allegations were placed on record. Alleged snitching paperwork was distributed publicly. Rick Ross publicly co-signed every element of the attack. And 50 Cent, the man who ended careers with How to Rob, who humiliated Ja Rule into irrelevance, who built an entire empire on the strategy of destroying opponents with words, did not record a single response bar. By the standards that hip-hop itself has always used to judge these conflicts, that sequence of events constitutes a beating. A cultural one. A reputational one. But here is the counter-argument that changes everything. 50 Cent is not playing the same game anymore. He never agreed to fight on the terms T.I. set. T.I. wanted a rap battle, a versus, a catalog showdown, a lyrical competition. And 50 Cent refused to give him that. Instead, 50 redirected the entire conflict onto terrain where he has already demonstrated total dominance, the documentary space. He transformed T.I.'s diss tracks, his son's attacks, and years of lingering allegations into a single deleted Instagram post that generated more press coverage than any of those diss tracks received individually. That's not losing. That's fighting where your opponent cannot follow you. The rap battle between these two giants may be stalled or one-sided for now. But the war itself is absolutely not over. If 50 Cent genuinely follows through on the surviving T.I. and Tiny documentary, given his partnership with Netflix, his active deal with A&E, his credibility as a documentary producer, and his stated commitment to real storytelling, this conflict will migrate from Instagram feeds and music streaming platforms directly onto the most powerful screen in the world. And if there's one thing that every chapter of 50 Cent's story teaches us, from surviving 9 gunshot wounds in 2000, to dominating the charts in 2003, to building the biggest power franchise in cable television history, to producing a documentary that 21.8 million people watched in less than a week, it's that you should never, ever assume this man is finished. T.I. wanted to celebrate their legacies together in a versus. 50 Cent gave him something entirely different, a documentary threat that turned every press appearance for Kill the King into a potential ambush. The Harris family came with diss tracks, t-shirts, and paperwork. 50 Cent